TV programming to announce that the Cuban Missile Crisis is over at last. After much debilitation between the Soviet Union and Kennedy's cabinet, President Kennedy agreed to remove all missiles, setting southern Italy and Turkey in exchange for Khrushchev removing all missiles in Cuba.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba.
For many people, the 12 days of the Cuban Missile Crisis were the most frightening of their lives. The Berlin Wall had been built by the Russians the previous year. Kennedy had been elected as the United States President by promising to get through with the communists. In April 1962, America had placed nuclear missiles in Turkey. In 1959, Fidel Castro had taken power in Cuba. He soon took actions to nationalize American companies. In response to this, the USA stopped buying Cuban sugar and refused to supply Cuba with oil. The US government became increasingly concerned about the new Cuban government. This led to a fear that the US might intervene against Cuba. This fear materialized when in 1961, Cuban exiles trained by the US staged an invasion of Cuban territory at the Bay of Pigs, although this invasion was quickly repulsed. Castro soon became convinced that the US was serious about invading Cuba. Shortly after the failed Bay of Pigs invasion, Castro declared Cuba as a socialist republic, entering into close ties with the Soviet Union. This led to a major upgrade of Cuban military defense. In February 1962, the US began an economic embargo against Cuba.
The United States was concerned about an expansion of communism, and a Latin American country allying openly with the USSR was regarded by as unacceptable given the US-Soviet enmity since the end of World War II. Such an involvement would also directly defy the Monroe Doctrine, a U.S. policy which, while limiting the United States' involvement in European colonies and European affairs, held that the Western Hemisphere was in the U.S. sphere of influence. The United States have been embarrassed publicly by the failed Bay of Pigs invasion in April 1961, which had been launched under President John F. Kennedy by CIA-trained forces of Cuban exiles. Afterward, former President Eisenhower told Kennedy that the failure of the Bay of Pigs will embolden the Soviets to do something that they would otherwise not to do. The half-hearted invasion left Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev and his advisors with the impression that Kennedy was indecisive and, as a Soviet advisor wrote, to young intellectual not prepared well for the decision-making in crisis situations. Too intelligent and too weak, U.S. covert operations against Cuba continued in 1961, with the similarity on successful Operation Mongoose.
On October 27, after much deliberation between the Soviet Union and Kennedy's cabinet, Kennedy secretly agreed to remove all missiles set in southern Italy and Turkey, later on the border of the Soviet Union, in exchange of Khrushchev removing all missiles in Cuba. The practical effect on this Kennedy-Khrushchev pact was that it effectively strengthened Castro's position in Cuba, guaranteeing that the USA would not invade Cuba anymore.
Thanks for watching and sorry for the interruption.